Today's episode is sponsored by A24's new horror comedy, Death of a Unicorn, in theaters everywhere, March 28th. Critics are calling Death of a Unicorn a hilarious and wild ride. Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega star as a father and daughter whose weekend trip takes a turn after a run-in with a unicorn. But when a family of billionaires seeks to exploit the creature, turns out payback is a beast. Experience this bloody, horny good time in theaters everywhere, March 28th. Tickets on sale now.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
You have to control yourself!
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking, given the complete freedom of choice, I don't want to squeeze the goddamn Charmin. We're talking, I like to watch women do a little domestic chores. And we're talking, I lost my virginity to an untrustworthy chemist. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking, I'll just die if I don't get this recipe.
Oh my god. Except now say it 12 more times.
I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. I'll just die if I don't get it. Everyone, we are discussing Bryan Forbes' adaptation of Ira Levin's novel, The Stepford Wives, to conclude our themed month of doppelgangers and deception. And, funnily enough, slightly late, but celebrating this film's 50th anniversary.
Oh my god, 50 years, yeah. I think we debated doing it back in January, which is when the 50th occurred, but as often is the case with us, the timing just didn't quite work out. And then I think I ended up saying, well, why don't we just do this and a couple of other films around the same thing? And lo and behold, here we are. It's
interesting because you would think for a 50th anniversary, maybe I just missed the boat, but I didn't see a lot of retrospectives last month or 2 months ago for this film. And I'm a little surprised because it's kind of a hot button social issues film.
The film has only gotten more fucking timely and topical and relevant, and it's scary.
I'm telling you, I was actually surprised to find out that this was, I get the divisiveness of this film. I get it, but at the same time, and how poorly reviewed it was when it came out.
Yeah, 50 years ago, different time, different situation, but I too was surprised. This is a perfect film. This is a classic. And I think I have a soft spot for Ira Levin because I've read both this as well as Rosemary's Baby. They are short, folks. So if you were looking for a punchy read that you can probably do in an afternoon, it's a big recommend.
And by short, he means 150 pages.
Yeah, barely a novella.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember, because do you have a relationship with this movie at all?
Nothing specific. I remember watching it when I was doing my big kind of horror movie catch up in the mid 2000s, back when I was plotting my horror movie course back at, the university and so on. And then I covered this with Gina and Jen on White Ladies in Crisis, I want to say last year. It's a really good conversation if you want to hear me talk about it with ladies. That, Yeah, but no, this is just a film that I think has really stood the test of time. I'm not going to lie. I think some people find this a bit too slow. If anybody quibbles with me that this is a horror film, I will punch you into the sun, though.
Oh, no, it's very much a horror film. I mean, here's the thing. Like, this movie is 5 minutes shy of 2 hours. And I did see a lot of reviews that were like, it is bloated, it's too long, it's boring. And
I disagree.
I do disagree. I mean, I don't think it's a perfect film like you do, but I mean, this is a 4-star film for me. I really enjoy it. And I was never bored watching it because I was always entertained watching it.
Yeah, there's just always something interesting happening. But one of the things I really appreciate about it is that it doesn't try to hide that there is something going on. Like, you and I had a conversation offline about how this differs from Rosemary's Baby, because Rosemary is so young and naive and kind of not quite idealistic, but she's very sheltered. So we as the audience know that something nefarious is going on with the Cassavetes, but here it's like Joanna is onto something and Bobbie is onto something, and it's just a question of will they figure it out before it gets them. So I think that there's this creeping sense of dread mixed in with a kind of David Lynch suburbia expose.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also kind of like an investigative piece. Like, we're watching these women do like go on a clue hunt for mysteries. And
absolutely, let's test the water. Let's talk to the other ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely heard about this movie from my dad. My dad talked about this movie, not a lot, but the phrase Stepford wife has become kind of part of the cultural lexicon. So absolutely, I knew about it through that, but I probably came most aware of it like when the remake was coming out in 2004. Oh, sure. And I think that I'm 90% certain I saw the remake first. And so I think I knew going in when I finally saw the original, which would have been late high school, early college or something. Like, I think I knew at that point, hey, this is not the campy comedy show that the remake is. So I'm glad that I knew that, because I think if I walked in expecting something like the remake, this might have been like, it's a little bit jarring. But no, I mean, I definitely liked it, but I don't think I'd rewatched it since then, to be honest.
Okay, well, the other thing that you would be forgiven for not revisiting this film, it's notoriously difficult to track fucking down, because even as we programmed this, it was available. And then you went to watch it and you were like, hi, where are we watching this? Yeah, I can watch this for free on Tubi in Canada, but this is a film that is often not streaming. It doesn't have any kind of flashy 50th anniversary Blu-ray or boutique release. So I do feel like this is weirdly a film that people have forgotten a little.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they've forgotten it, because I just feel like the phrase Stepford wife is just like, I feel like everyone knows what that is, but maybe that's
just the phrase, not the film. Right?
That is true. Yeah. I'm really surprised there hasn't been a Blu-ray release of this. Not even a boutique one, but just a regular one. Like, the fact that I had to like churn up the bucks for a DVD copy of this film, which is not great quality, by the way.
No. This movie needs a touch up. You know what? This movie needs to be Stepfordized. Yeah. But only in the technical aspects.
Yeah. I mean, also, everyone, if you were not able to track this down, allegedly, this film is allegedly on YouTube. Allegedly. But okay, well, why don't we go into this, Joe? So, as I said, this is based on Ira Levin's 1972 novel/novella. I don't know.
Sure.
And of course, yes, he's the author of Rosemary's Baby, like you said. So, you having read both of these books, the books are also satirical, right?
I mean, they're kind of dark social critique. So I would say that they are satire. Yeah.
Okay, so
so I'm agreeing with you, is what I'm saying.
The answer is yes. Yes, they are. I was like,
I feel like people often confuse parody with satire. Yes. Satire has like a political biting edge to it, and a parody is a full-on mockery. And unfortunately, I think that people conflate the two versions of the Stepford Wives. So like 2004 leans into parody for me, whereas this one is firmly satire.
I agree with you 100%. And I think, honestly, for the longest time, I did conflate the two, because I thought that if it was a satire, it meant that it had to be a comedy. And that's not always the case. But with parody, it's like, we're making fun of specific things. So it's like, look at Scary Movie, where it's like, okay, we're taking specific scenes from these horror movies and making them funny with like lowbrow humor. But satire has like, do I want to say it has a message to it?
Yes, most often.
Okay, there you go. So screenwriter William Goldman, who had relatively recently won a Best Screenplay Oscar for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and would win another Oscar the year after the Stepford Wives came out for All the President's Men. Yeah, he wrote a screenplay adapting Ira Levin's novel, and I couldn't figure out why he did this. It just seems like he wanted to, and I mean, I'm sure at the time he was probably a hot commodity, because William Goldman, if no one knows, I mean, really, really big screenwriter. You know, after All the President's Men, he also wrote the Magic movie that I have never seen with Anthony Hopkins and that doll.
Oh God, okay.
I know, but he also wrote the book of The Princess Bride and the screenplay adaptation of it, as well as such great Stephen King adaptations like Misery and mediocre ones like Hearts in Atlantis and dreadful ones like Dreamcatcher.
Oh, your favorite. I knew that name sounded familiar.
I know, because one of those things, it's like, this is like a 2-time Oscar-winning screenwriter, and
then fart noise. Literal fart noise.
It's okay. Honestly, with the timeline I have for Stepford Wives, William Goldman doesn't come off as a very nice man, but I mean, well, yeah. So, okay.
You'll go into it.
Yeah. So producer Edgar J. Sherrick, he wanted Brian De Palma to direct the Stepford Wives because he really liked his 1972 film Sisters, starring Margot Kidder.
Yes. Great film.
Oh, I've never seen it, but I have the Criterion. So it's one of those where, okay, this is really funny. During the pandemic, I spent like a long time, like once a month, buying like a horror release from Criterion. So I have all of Criterion's horror films. And my plan was, okay, once a month now, I'm just going to go down the list alphabetically and watch them.
Sure.
And I haven't done that at all.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, here's the good news. We could cover Sisters on the pod. Like, it's not exceptionally queer, but it would even fit this bill, like Doppelganger's Deception. So
that's great. Okay, cool. So one month, we're going to cover Sisters and then follow it up with Dreamcatcher.
Oh, I did not agree to that. No.
Talk about fart noise. No, but so De Palma even read the script for Stepford Wives, and he was so excited to direct it. He even told this producer, he was like, "Oh, this is my ticket to the big time. Like, this is going to make me and like make my career." Okay. Well, Goldman vetoed that, and I have no idea why, but his exact words. And so, by the way, all of this is coming from a 15-minute documentary on the Stepford Wives DVD called The Stepford Life, and then an oral history for Entertainment Weekly from 2017. But basically, what Goldman said about this was, if you hire Brian De Palma, I don't want anything ever to do with this picture ever again.
Jesus.
Yeah, and I could not find anywhere for like the reason why he thought that, but he did say that.
Okay, so we did not like De Palma, and we had to move on.
Which, again, though, like, don't you want to know what Brian De Palma's Stepford Wives would look like?
Okay, let's hit pause and let's just speculate. Would it involve split screens?
Split screens, split diopters. I just think it's interesting because, you know, we've talked about De Palma before, and like, you know, obviously he breaks out into the scene with like Carrie, which is a really good like female centric piece. But I feel like just to see him do a movie that's all women, like, I would just love to see what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, it's still kind of fascinating and not at all surprising that it is almost exclusively all men who are involved in both versions of this enterprise.
Yes. Hey, we'll get to the reception in a minute, but do you think this would have been received better had women created it?
I think in 1975, that was just never on the table. It was never a possibility. In 2004, I don't know what the fuck we were doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute, but the messaging of the original is completely lost in the remake. But...
Oh, yeah.
But okay, so this producer, Sherrick, he then recruits British director Bryan Forbes to direct the screenplay. But I thought this was an interesting pick because he was mostly known for directing crime thrillers and war films. Like, not what this movie is, you know?
No. I mean, I guess there's a bit of a deliberate pacing. As we said, some people will misconstrue that as slow, that you might find in quote unquote more serious ventures. Yeah. But yeah, like crime thrillers. Well, maybe they were like, ooh, it's genre adjacent. Like they're kind of touching each other.
Well, bear in mind, though, it's also a British director directing a very American film about America.
Yeah. Hence my mention of David Lynch, because this definitely did give me some Blue Velvet-y sort of vibes. But yeah, I mean, it's always super fascinating when we hire a Brit to do a very American text.
Yeah. So, okay. This did have a slightly troubled production, just like the remake. But the first hurdle they all faced was trying to find the right woman to play protagonist Joanna Eberhardt because they kept getting turned down. And
okay.
Here's the thing. Forbes met with Diane Keaton. Like, he was like, yeah, I was talking to her. She was really into it. 5 o'clock, she left. It was like, cool, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I get a call at 9 a.m. the next day from Diane who says, I'm really sorry, I can't do the film. And he's like, why?
Why?
Well, I showed the script to my analyst and he raised a lot of red flags, so I can't do it. And
my analyst?
Yeah, I was like, your analyst? Like, what? So I don't know what that person does. Like, is it like you look at the script, they read it and say, okay, this is how it could potentially affect your career?
Maybe. I mean, I kind of assumed that was a synonym for a therapist or something. It's like, maybe this isn't going to be good for your health. But your rationale would make more sense. Like, oh, I showed this to my agent, my analyst, and they said, in terms of your career trajectory, this is a no.
Well, just when I hear analyst, I think numbers. So I'm like, okay, so did she leave this guy's office at 5 p.m., go to her analyst's office, and he like gave her this like whatever the equivalent of PowerPoint was back in 1975 and was like, here you go. This is your career, and here's the line down. You go down if you do this movie.
Right, yeah, this feminist film. This is not the time. Don't do it.
So that was gone. Then they went to Jean Seberg, who was the lead in Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless.
Okay.
She turned it down. Also, I think she died by suicide a few years after this, by the way. They did find success also in Tuesday Weld, who did wind up getting cast as Joanna, but then she also had to drop out at the last minute for quote-unquote reasons unknown.
Okay.
They finally settled on Catherine Ross, who was then best known for her role in The Graduate, but also Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which was written by William Goldman.
Okay, so we had a connection, and maybe Goldman is helping to veto or to narrow down the list.
Yeah, but also Peter Masterson, who plays Walter, Joanna's husband, he was like best friends with William Goldman, and the director didn't know that.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Also, fun fact, I'm sure you know this, but Mary Stuart Masterson is Peter Masterson's daughter, and she plays one of their daughters in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, there is some weird, I'm not going to say nepotism because we've definitely begun to overuse the term both societally, but also sometimes on the pod. But I did think it was funny that, what's her name? Carol Van Sant, the neighbor lady, that's
the director's wife.
Yeah, I was like, oh, like, well, we need to unpack that in therapy.
Well, okay, so I'm glad that's a perfect segue. So, okay, they shot this on location in Connecticut in towns like Darien and Fairfield. So all the exteriors are actually Connecticut. But here's the thing. Forbes is the one who came up with the signature Stepford style, which in his words was Marilyn Monroe meets June Cleaver. Right. This was in stark contrast to the way Goldman portrayed them in his screenplay. And I think, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think this is how Levin portrays them in his book as well. But they were portrayed as more like Playboy Bunny style goddesses.
Yeah, the whole idea was that they were very much sexualized objects.
Yes. So here's the thing. There's no official reason why Bryan Forbes changed this aspect of William Goldman's script, but this is obviously a big reason why William Goldman wasn't happy with this.
Okay.
But the rumor was that when Forbes cast his wife, Nanette Newman, they were like, well, she's not going to work as a Playboy Bunny type character, so let's change the look to fit her.
Oh, that is interesting. I'm not going to lie. I think that the fashion in this movie is one of the most memorable parts of it.
I actually prefer it to whatever a Playboy Bunny type would be.
That's just so fucking obvious and not particularly interesting. Like, I don't think that this movie is subtle per se. Like, I think it's quite obvious what it is trying to do and how it's looking to make you feel as an audience, whether you identify as male or female or something in between. Like, the messaging is clear, but I like that the costumes, which by the way are designed by Anna Hill Johnstone, they have like a sexy demure cross to them. Like, it feels like there is a tension inherent in the way that the Stepford Wives are dressed, and I think that reflects part of the aim of the film.
Well, I think it's also like a reversal of time. Like, it feels of like a very 50s. I mean, he says June Cleaver meets Marilyn Monroe, so that's like 30s and 50s right there. So I think it aids the theme more, where it's like we're going back in time with the fashion as opposed to like half-naked Playboy bunnies, you know?
Yeah, and also, can you imagine if you moved to this town and everyone just dressed like, what, super fucking sexy? it would be too obvious. Like, no one would ever move there and think that everything was kind of normal, but a little bit weird. I guess the other piece about the fashion, and then maybe we can move on, you can get back to your production, but it also gives me a Southern vibe to it. Like, I know that this is set in Connecticut, but in between some of the accent work, like particularly Bobbie, the best friend who we all fucking love, like, this movie does give a kind of Louisiana, Texas, like, let's have a mint julep in the afternoon kind of vibes. And I like that because it does inform the sort of cattiness of this.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, again, not to go back to the Playboy Bunny thing, but it's like, I think that could work. It would just kind of change the tone of the movie because it would be so unsubtle, you know?
Yes.
Like, and again, not saying it wouldn't work, it would just be a very different movie.
Very different.
Now, Goldman is on the record as being very unhappy with the final film, saying that the whole thing was an unpleasant experience because Forbes rewrote most of it, including the final supermarket scene that may be the film's most famous sequence.
Right.
At one point, Goldman even tried to take his name off of it, but the proverbial they would not let him.
Okay, so I'm going to say drama queen for this guy.
Yeah. And in Forbes' words, he was charming, and then he became progressively less charming as the days went on.
Oh, so like all the men in the Stepford Wives movie.
Kinda, yeah. So, okay, The Stepford Wives was given a limited theatrical release on January 22nd, 1975. And by limited, I mean 2 cities.
Okay.
Before expanding nationwide on February 12th, 1975. So there's a, 50th anniversary, It wound up grossing $4 million. And I don't have the budget for it, but it wasn't considered a box office success. And in fact, when it wasn't a success, William Goldman then blamed Bryan Forbes for changing it, saying, if you would have kept it my way, this would have made money.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Now, critical reception was mixed, and we're looking at, and again, old movie, so take the Rotten Tomatoes with a grain of salt, but right now we're looking at a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of...
fuck?
Oh, just wait. With an average score of 6.3 out of 10. But I wanted to point out, because the top critics are still, like, they're contemporary, like, of the time pieces, and so... The top critic score is 17%, with an average score of 4.3 out of 10 based on 6 reviews. And...
Holy, wow, okay.
So, like, Chicago Reader, overlong and underdeveloped. This would probably have made a decent TV movie, but on the big screen and stretched to nearly 2 hours, it sags badly.
Tell me you've never seen a TV movie. They're all 2 hours.
That's what I thought, too. But I guess with the commercials, they're 90 minutes. But still, Time Out. Goldman's leisurely script and Forbes' dull direction never quite captured the subtleties of Ira Levin's novel. Roger Ebert, 2 out of 4, by the way. I can imagine similar material being directed by, say, Woody Allen, and coming out pointed and funny. Instead, Bryan Forbes gets all solemn and spooky and goes for obvious effects like bolts of lightning and forbidding gothic mansions.
Solemn and spooky. Oh no, not for a horror film, Raj.
And then Pauline Kael, The New Yorker. The dialogue is gummy, the situation's dimly functional. The movie gives the impression of a patchwork script, and it's blah and becalmed, which... I love that Pauline Kael just putting the word blah in her review.
You know what, everybody? Let's bring back blah. It's no longer fine, Trace. It's not perfectly adequate. It's all blah.
It's blah.
Now.
It's blah.
Yeah.
Now, initially, many second-wave feminists derided this film as exploitative trash. And a 1975 New York Times article described how Columbia Pictures invited feminist activists to a Stepford Wives screening, only for them to meet the film with hisses, groans, and guffaws, to the point where even noted feminist Betty Friedan, the author of The Feminine Mystique, which I've never read, but I definitely know what it is because of 10 Things I Hate About You.
I mean, it's a fucking classic, yeah.
Yeah, but she called it a ripoff of the women's movement and then apparently stomped out of the screening room.
Yeah, she did. So it's interesting that you mention her because I did want to gently contextualize the world that this movie came out in. So it's 1975. We're firmly in the thick of second wave feminism. Folks, I'm going to do like a total half-ass job on this. I'm going to say Faculty of Horror is probably right there, and like countless other areas where like they will give you the goods. But one of the interesting things that I found is that 5 years earlier, on August 26th of 1970, 50 feminists paraded down New York City's Fifth Avenue as part of the Women's Strike for Equality March. So participants held signs. I love these slogans, Trace. Don't iron while the strike is hot, and don't cook dinner, starve a rat today. Like,
oh my God.
Fucking bangers, right? Okay. So this event was officially sponsored by the National Organization for Women, or NOW, and that's the brainchild of Betty Friedan. So she basically wanted this to be a day of action that would show the American media the scope and power of second wave feminism. And that's because at this point, women's liberation was extremely controversial and the movement was still in its infancy. So we're coming out of free love in the 60s where everybody's just getting along. Women start to realize, oh, okay, yeah, like there's lots of opportunities, but they're all still being controlled by men. Like every fucking sector, it's just men as far as the eye can see. There's no protection for women. There's no consideration for like the labor of women, even like never mind in the workforce, but like domestic labor, which this movie is all about.
Right. No
recognition of it. Nothing for like daycare, stuff like that. Basically, you're 9 to 5. Like, think of the plot of 9 to 5 as well.
Oh, I love 9 to 5.
So one of the things that the organizers of this event were trying to do, they had 3 specific goals, and this is overall the reflection of second wave feminism. So they wanted free abortion on demand, they wanted equal opportunity in employment and education, and they wanted the establishment of a 24/7 childcare center, or like childcare centers.
Free abortion on demand. Like, are we still fighting for that?
Well, we barely even had abortion and now it's completely gone.
Progress.
Well, and that's why I said that this film remains so fucking topical. But like, so that was the environment that second wave feminism was in 5 years earlier. Friedan organizes this big event. It actually gained traction all over the US. Like they had demonstrations in multiple other cities. Like they marched in Washington. They did like guerrilla style protests in other cities and so on. So it was a really, really fucking big deal. But then I think when you get to a movie like this, part of the reason the reception was so rocky by some of these feminists is because at this point, but even 5 years later, they had become more mainstream. So like a movie like this looks like it's corrupting the message. But I think what a lot of people nowadays would say is that this movie is a reflection of how popularized second wave feminism had become, that we basically said, let's make an entire movie with these ideas. And I think at the time it was hard to see that, and it felt like the movie was maybe making fun or co-opting or like trying to sell the product back to women, as opposed to saying, no, we see you, and like this is how far it could be taken if women don't get equal opportunities and rights.
That's the thing, because I'm sure we'll have more to say about all of this, and how the film handles its satire. But like, Friedan thought Ira Levin was saying that this is the way things should be, but Levin and Forbes didn't feel this way at all. I mean, Forbes is on record as saying, if anything, the film is anti-men, not anti-women. But
100%.
But this is, again, this is like the 50 years ago version of Poe's Law. Poe's Law being that internet culture like term where it's like, without a clear indicator of the author's intent, any parodic or sarcastic expression of extreme views or satire can be mistaken by some readers for a sincere expression of those views. And this is a case where it's like, this to me is very clearly satire, but I'm also like living in 2025. So maybe in 1975, this wasn't clearly satire. I'm not sure.
I mean, I think it also circles back to the point, if this had been made by women, would they have received it differently? I think they would have immediately said, oh, okay, you get us, and that's why you did this, as opposed to, okay, well, these men, what are they actually trying to accomplish here?
But it's so hard to deal with the what ifs, because what if it was the exact same movie that we have here, but it was female written and directed? And it's like, well, does that change anything if it's the same movie? I guess it would be the same movie. So
it wouldn't be the same film. Yeah.
But I guess again, I get it, and I'm not a woman, and I'm not a woman in 1975, so I don't. But I just, just a lot of anger.
It's hard for us, I think, especially to understand, because like when I look at this movie, the women are great and the men are to a T awful.
Yeah.
Like garbage, terrible, hissable. I want them all to pay. I want them all to suffer.
Maybe, too, it's the fact that, maybe the ending is kind of the thing. Because, the ending of this movie is very nihilistic.
Very dark.
Yeah. Like, the movie is dark, but I think there's a levity to this film that I appreciate. But yeah, so maybe because it's like, well, this is how it ends. This is how it is.
But that's to me, it's like, well, this is real life. So no, this random woman is not going to circumvent the system because everyone is working against her.
Well, I think that's also just like a trait of genre filmmaking, right? Like it's a horror film, so it's like it's not going to always be happy. So I don't know. But okay, can I move on?
Yep.
Okay. Nevertheless, this film remained in the cultural zeitgeist and spawned a franchise. So these sequels, Jesus Christ.
Any TV movies?
All of them are.
Oh, okay.
In 1982, we get Revenge of the Stepford Wives, starring Sharon Gless and Don Johnson. And this is a direct sequel to this film, but the only returning character I could see was Diz, but he is recast.
Okay.
But it also retcons things. Like in this version, the wives have been brainwashed and kept compliant by the thyroid pills that the men give them, and to keep them subservient, they must not drink alcohol, miss the medication, or be overstimulated. Otherwise, they'll become hostile and potentially violent.
Oh, interesting. So they're not robots in this version.
They're not. And it's, again, weird because it's a direct sequel to this film. So I the only thing I can think of, because I haven't watched it, is maybe Diz gives this kind of thing where it's like, well, we tried robots and that didn't really work out. So now we're doing brainwashing or something. I don't know.
Sure. Something in the water.
Yes. Then in 1987, we get the TV movie The Stepford Children, starring I Dream of Jeannie herself, Barbara Eden.
Ooh.
I know. Yeah, I used to love I Dream of Jeannie. I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched. Like, I just love them. Which brings back the idea of robots, but the husbands are also turning the rebellious teenagers into robots.
Stay tuned. We're going to cover a near identical text to that next month.
Yes, we actually, I don't know why we didn't program that this month, but it's fine. This film, though, sees the destruction of the Men's Association mansion. So, that's kind of almost like the concluding trilogy part of it.
Okay.
Then we have 1996's The Stepford Husbands, starring Donna Mills, Cindy Williams, and Louise Fletcher in the Diz role, but it's not Diz.
Oh, so is it gender flip? We're turning the men? Oh,
yes.
See, I cannot see that working.
Well, that's what the remake does, because... So then we have Frank Oz's much maligned 2004 remake, which turned the story into a campy comedy and then featured an all-star cast. I mean, Nicole Kidman, Bette Midler, Glenn Close, Matthew Broderick, Christopher Walken, John Lovitz, Roger Bart, Faith Hill, this movie, but I'm not going to go too much into this, but this movie had a starting budget of $35 million, and because of reshoots and rewrites and all the production of this thing, it ballooned to $100 million.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of those films where I always knew that certain films had problems and they went over budget and there was issues on set and creative clashes and personalities and so on. I think this was one of the first films where I was really paying attention to entertainment journalism.
Yeah.
And we were getting fed news reports about what is going on with this fucking movie. But this is one where I truly want to see all the different iterations. I want to see the original before the reshoots. I want to see, who did what and when. I need to see all the receipts because it feels like 12 things went horribly wrong. And
because the only general consensus I got is yes, no one got along. The big problem, for lack of a better phrase, was Bette Midler. Apparently she and Frank Oz clashed a lot. But if you look at interviews with anyone about that movie, I found quotes from Broderick and I think someone else, but they both said no one had a good time making that movie. Which I will say, I did rewatch it today because I was I mean, it's not good, but it is a direct remake of this. I mean, there are scenes that are just fully lifted. It is very 2004 in its humor, so it's not always PC. But I mean, I don't know. There's stuff there is stuff that works in it. I laughed plenty. They incorporate a gay couple, which is kind of cool. Yes. But when they Stepfordize him, he becomes butch and not effeminate, which I think was really cool.
Yeah.
But the issue is, with that movie, there's a huge plot hole because in the same scene of the climax, they say, "Oh look, they're robots," and then literally 2 seconds later, they're like, "Oh look, there are microchips in your brains that make you do this," and they don't. They contradict each other. So whatever happened in these reshoots, something let this happen where. it doesn't make any sense.
And somebody fell asleep in the editing room, didn't catch it.
And then the thematic issue with this movie is, so like Christopher Walken is the Diz character. And in the the closing like grocery store scene that we get in the original, that takes place like 70 minutes into the remake because it's a 90-minute movie. And basically, Diz is revealed to be a robot, Christopher Walken, because his wife, Glenn Close, is a human who started the Stepford Wife program because she walked in. She was a career woman. She walked in on Christopher Walken cheating on her. She killed him and his mistress, and she moved to Stepford to build a town of robots of perfect women.
Which makes also no sense.
No sense at all. And I can kind of look by it because the movie is very stupid and very campy and very silly. But it does, like, I mean, as a remake of, like, trying to match the theme of the original, completely misses it.
Yeah. I've actually seen some people try to argue that it's the film talking about how outdated second wave feminism is to the point that the women have circled back to become the predators and the people who are the problem. And I'm just like, oh, well, that's a really terrible message. And especially now that we're, 20 years removed from that. And we're basically back into the situation that we were in back in the 70s. It just feels even more antiquated. Like what the 2004 film is trying to make fun of, we never got there. Like, we can't say that women are doing things in the same way that men did because women never even got their fucking chance. Well, men have just suppressed them at every point.
And that's why, though, like when I found out about the Stepford Husbands, I was like, maybe because that was the most recent Stepford film to be released. And so I was like, maybe they were pulling from that or whatever. I don't know. I mean, again, that movie was started out like to be more in line with the tone of the original film, and the studio made them turn it into a comedy. So it's like, I don't know, man.
It's a Franken film. Like nobody truly wanted to make the film that got released.
It very much is. But again, like as a 90-minute like silly comedy, like I laughed. It's fun. It's watchable, but it's not, it doesn't hold a candle to this film.
Right. I am legitimately curious though about that Stepford Husbands movie. If folks have seen it, I need to know. Like, is it good? Is it terrible? Does it actually manage to work? Because I just can't imagine this premise working with that plot.
Well, also because you're casting like Oscar winner Louise Fletcher, Nurse Ratched herself, as the Diz role in that movie, which is inspired casting, but
I think it's good. Yeah,
I was hoping it might be on Tubi, but I don't think it's streaming anywhere.
Of course.
I know. But anyway, so nevertheless, I mean, like the phrase Stepford wife is kind of recognized by everyone. So like whatever you think of the film's quality, it left a mark on culture.
There we go. Yeah.
So, Joe, what happens in this movie? Today's episode is sponsored by A24's new horror comedy, Death of a Unicorn, in theaters everywhere, March 28th. Critics are calling Death of a Unicorn a hilarious and wild ride. Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega star as a father and daughter whose weekend trip takes a turn after a run-in with a unicorn. But when a family of billionaires seeks to exploit the creature, turns out payback is a beast. Experience this bloody, horny good time in theaters everywhere, March 28th. Tickets on sale now.
You guys, everything at Abercrombie is 25% off right now. I seriously can't remember the last time they had a sale this good. And if you're like me, your cart is about to turn into a massive haul. Use code SPOTIFYAF for an extra 15% off through March 31st, 2025. Valid in US and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. See details online. 25% off everything is valid in US and Canada through March 31st, 2025. Excludes clearance and gift cards. Online price reflects discount.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Okay, so we open on a dialogue-free scene of Joanna Everhart, who is played by Catherine Ross. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I think that she is really fucking good as like an emotional lead and protagonist of this film.
I agree. I also love like the first shot of this movie is like Joanna looking at herself in a mirror. So like doubles.
Doubles.
I thought this was interesting. Ross has a quote where she says, she went back and revisited the film, I think in like the early 2000s. And she said, if I had a chance to do it again, I would do the ending differently on my part. I sort of end up giving up. I don't fight at the very end. And I think I would fight harder. But I guess for me, I think she's actually, and maybe it's because I'm comparing her to like the Rosemary character from Rosemary's Baby, but I do think she has a lot of agency. I do think she's strong. I do think she fights back, but I guess maybe when we get to the climax, we can talk about it.
Yeah, like I think she's specifically talking about that very last scene that she has as a human being. And, from what we see, she just gets murdered by the robot. But I don't know. I kind of think that that's part of the appeal for me. Like she has been so systematically broken down at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So we very quickly learn that Joanna is leaving this apartment. That's part of the reason she looks slightly despondent, a little unmoored. And she goes downstairs. She's got 2 kids. I'm not even going to name them because I don't fucking care.
They're not characters, really.
They're plot devices, but they're not characters.
When I saw that Mary Stuart Masterson was one of them, I was like,
sure.
What? Okay, yeah, sure, I guess.
Question mark. So, yeah, she's waiting in the car, but then she decides to climb out so she can take a photograph of a mannequin with its face covered being carried across the street. And I like this as a almost too cute on the nose reference of like, hey, we're foreshadowing what's to come.
Well, because the girl says, like, oh, I saw a man carrying a naked woman. And the dad's reply is, well, that's why we're going to Stepford. And it's like, oh, double meaning right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I am also looking to control women and get away from the yahoos that live in New York City.
But that being said, though, it is like Walter doesn't know actually what's happening in Stepford yet.
I completely beg to differ.
No. Oh, okay. Because I'll wait till we get there. So keep going. Keep going.
Okay, so as you said, her husband Walter, played by Peter Masterson, he arrives and we get a taste of what their relationship is like immediately because he is carrying the dog and he just shits on her. Hey, this was your responsibility. How come you left it up here? I guess you didn't look very closely. And then montage as we are driving out of the big city. So leaving behind those 50,000 second wave feminists who marched down the fucking street for women's lib so that we can go to white as fuck, manicured lawns, picket fences, palatial house porn, Connecticut.
So pretty, though.
It is very pretty. Yes. Okay. So as we drive past the city limit, we should note that a police officer pauses to watch the car pass. I could not figure out who this actor is. I looked on Wikipedia. I looked on IMDb. This person doesn't exist, apparently.
Okay.
But he'll pop up again a little bit later at the end of the film. But then the family pulls into the drive of this enormous white country home. We see the movers moving them in. There's a little bit of like discomfort where Joanna offers them coffee and they say, oh, we can only drink beer on the job. And you just think, okay, that's a bit of a red flag right there.
Yeah.
And then soft-spoken neighbor Carol Van Sant, who was played by Nanette Newman, drops off a casserole because that's what good neighbors do.
I actually really like Van Sant's performance because immediately you can tell something is off with this woman. Like I wrote my note, she looks kind of dead-eyed, like just this blank, vacant stare almost.
Yeah, there's a weird performativity to it, which I like that the robots don't move like robots. They don't act like robots, except when they get wounded. And then, they have a tendency to glitch and repeat. But apart from that, they're passable, but not unlike last week's episode when we were talking about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There's just something a little wrong with them. Like they are not believably human.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the only time they the blank stare kind of goes away is when they're talking about housework.
Oh my God. Easy Off? Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't seen The Truman Show like since I was a kid, but didn't it when they start going on about Easy Off, like, it reminds you of that scene in Truman Show when Laura Linney is like fighting with Jim Carrey and she just starts like peddling some like dish detergent or something because she's doing a commercial.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I did see in a couple of reviews for the 2004 film is that we just bring the kind of product placement stuff to the very center. But I love that in this movie, the 1975 version, like that's the telltale sign that you are totally fucked is when you basically become an influencer or like a spokesperson for a brand.
Mm-hmm. Sold your soul.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the reason that I said that about Walter is because when he comes out after dinner, he is walking Fred the dog and he stops across the street from Ted. This would be Carol's husband. He's played by Joseph Summer. Mm-hmm. And we hear Walter say, Carol cooks as good as she looks. And to me, this is a telling sign of like, okay, these two already have a relationship, even though from what we can tell, this is the first time that they've met.
Yeah.
And like, based on what we're going to learn from Joanna when she accuses him of always making decisions in advance and then pretending to ask about things, like she says, you plan to move us to Stepford, to Connecticut, and then you asked, and then you had already made this deposit on this house and so on. So I think he was scouting and getting recruited by these men, and this is part of the reason he's here.
Okay, well, hold on to that because I have my other reason coming up later. Okay. Fun fact, though. So you know how during Invasion of the Body Snatchers last week, you said you went back and watched that 2007 The Invasion with Nicole Kidman?
Right.
Another lesser remake with Nicole Kidman, by the way.
Yeah, she doesn't always make great decisions. See,
well,
also,
Bewitched.
Shoot. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's 04 is Bewitched, 04 is Stepford Wives, 05 is Bewitched, and 07 is The Invasion. Like, I don't know what she was doing in the mid-2000s, but like, maybe she fired her agent. I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting now, right? Because we look at her career and we think, oh, she only makes interesting artistic choices. Oh, and she also coincidentally only makes movies with women now.
Yeah. But this guy, Joseph Summer, he plays the whatever the counterpart of Jeff Goldblum's character is in The Invasion. He plays Belichick.
Oh my God, he does. I also thought he looked familiar. Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so in the bedroom, Walter justifies why we moved out of here. So it's very flimsy, kind of surface level observations about why they needed to leave the hustle and the bustle of the big city and crime and all this kind of stuff. This is very much white flight. Like, we need to get out of here and get back to, good American values. We need to, like, we talk about how we can increase the property rights and that kind of stuff. Like, it's very white privilege.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way.
I mean, this is also a very white movie.
Oh, God, yes. Yes. I do love that we make a reference to black people and then we see two black people in the supermarket at the end.
Because what did she say? Like, I'm so excited to have black people moving. It's very progressive. Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Yeah, they're so liberal. Yes. One of the things that I love, just to make sure that we understand very early on that Walter is a dick. Like, the way he treats her about the dog, maybe a little justified. She almost forgot the family pet in the empty apartment before we move. Okay. But then he asks her if she's ever had sex in front of the fireplace, and her response is, not with you.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, so there is friction in this marriage. Like, she is not happy about this.
There is, but I mean, I don't think that Walter enters the movie as a reprehensible character. I do think that he gradually gets worse and worse in a believable way as he gets more immersed in the men's association.
I think he's not great to start with, and then you're right, he does get progressively worse. Like, there's one moment where I truly do feel a kind of emotional connection with Walter. We'll talk about it later.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in the morning, Joanna collects the mail. I did want to highlight that if you look at the mailbox, it says W. Eberhardt.
I caught that too. I was like, I guess it's the man of the house, but why did it just say
truly that?
Eberhardt?
It's like the women don't matter. It's all about the men.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then she gives a tentative interview to Gossipy, this is literally the character's name, Welcome Wagon Lady, played by Paula Truman. And this she's just this kindly, gossipy biddy who is doing a profile piece for the newspaper. But I do have to give a shout out to her enunciation when she says, "And what does your husband do?" And Joanna says, "Oh, he's a lawyer." And she goes, "Liar."
Well, that's actually because at the beginning of that conversation, she's like, "Oh, well, tell me about yourself." Well, there's not much to tell, really. Oh, well, what does your husband do? Because yeah, of course. Like, what else could you have to tell me? Like, what about your husband?
It's also shades of Nina from Black Swan, where she says, "Oh, and what did you do?" And Joanna's rambly, kinda, sorta, "Ooh, I'm an aspiring photographer, but I'm not very good." And like, it's just like, girl, no. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think her photographs suck when we see them later on. Like the kid shit, I'm just like, boo, what is this? Why do you think this is good? But this is her creative aspiration, and you can tell that no one has ever given her positive feedback. Like, this is the thing she wants to do, and she feels so uncertain about it that she just plays it down, which is such a feminine trait.
Yeah.
Like, we just tell women, oh, well, unless you are like Olympic status at something, you probably shouldn't even bother. Okay, so afterwards, Joanna goes to return this casserole dish, and she sees Ted groping Carol's breasts in the front yard. And later on, we clarify this is firmly midday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Walter, hearing this later on that night, he tries to emulate the behavior, and Joanna says, "Stepford has really done a number on you," which, again, a gentle bit of foreshadowing.
Just a little bit, but it's fine. I mean, and this kind of also escalates throughout the film, too, as it just, again, because these women are just sex objects. That's all they are.
Yeah, which I think for some folks is a reason why they don't understand the costuming change from the screenplay to the finished film, because if men truly just wanted maids, then, you know, wouldn't they also dress these women up as sex objects and like have them go around with the bunny ears and the leotards and that kind of stuff?
Right.
But I think that this is so much more insidious because they're doing a play acting of modesty. Oh, I want these chaste women in like full sundresses and fancy party hats, but then I want to be able to grab their tits midday whenever I want.
Mm-hmm.
Like I actually think it's darker, slightly more evil of these men.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, the men as a collective unit are reprehensible in this film. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of, this is where the topic of the men's society comes up, and she is frustrated because it truly, I mean, I love the way she calls him out on this by saying, well, you only ever ask me after you've already made up your mind.
Yep.
This felt like very relatable relationship issues. Like
it reminded me of the similar conversation that Olivia Hussey has with her douchebag boyfriend in Black Christmas.
Yes.
You know, where it's like,
my God.
Like we had that conversation about all those things we wanted to do. Well, like, just because your dream is ruined doesn't mean that I stopped wanting to do those things. I still want to do those things, and that's it.
Yeah, and especially with Joanna, the problem with her is that she obviously doesn't have a great deal of confidence in her photography, but it's way harder to fucking sell yourself as a photographer who's going to be exhibited in galleries if you're living in fucking Connecticut and you have to drive into the city the whole time. Like, really, this was clearly a Walter move, like a move for Walter.
Sure.
Okay, let's go to the grocery store. So it's a funny kind of visual contradiction where we see Joanna rushing around. She's trying to gather the kids. She's trying to get the ice cream through before Walter pays. And everybody else is just going about their business.
Yeah, so
everything
perfect.
is normal. Yeah.
Practically gliding through the aisles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's nicely offset when we get to the end of the film. And yep, everything is quote unquote how it's meant to be. So in the parking lot, this is when Carol Van Sant backs into Kit Sanderson's car. Kit Sanderson is played by Carol Mallory, and Carol has to be taken away in an ambulance, even though it's just a little scratch and nothing is really wrong.
It's just my head. So silly. It's just my head.
Yeah, so let's get her back to the robot factory. But oops, Joanna clocks, even though we're new in town, isn't that the opposite direction from the hospital?
Yeah. I like, though, that Walter agrees with her, because at first he's like, no, oh, wait. Huh.
Oh, wait.
You're right.
Maybe.
The robot hospital's the other way.
Truly, yes. Cyberdyne, is that you on the outside of town? Mm-hmm. All right. So we can see Joanna trying to put on a bit of a brave face because at night, one of the kids has some kind of nightmare or the teddy bear doesn't like the new room and so on. And she does this full lie about, oh, everything is actually really nice in Stepford and we're all having a great time. And it feels like she's half trying to convince herself of the fact.
I'm sure. I mean, again, any move from a big city to the burbs, it's just kind of like...
It's going to be rough.
It's an adjustment. I mean, She says something earlier where someone's like, what are you going to miss about the city? And she just says the noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, my God. Like, you and I both know what this is like, living in a big city. And then even if you just go camping or to a cottage, you suddenly realize, oh, God, I really am used to just... I mean, you clock the fire trucks and the police sirens outside on the recordings all the time. And I never do. I'm like, wait, what? The white noise? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's what puts me to sleep at night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Joanna wakes up in the middle of the night and she's by herself in the bed. So she goes down. This is where I think it's the end of any kind of redeemable qualities in Walter. So he's sitting in the living room. He's drinking. He looks slightly teary-eyed and he talks about like, basically, this is the night after the first meeting of the men's association, and she thinks that it's just regular stuff. Like, she reassures him that she's going to get used to it, and he keeps saying that he loves her. And you can tell that this is where he got the sales pitch fully, or he got accepted and got the sales pitch, and he sign the paperwork or whatever to say, yeah, turn my wife into a fucking robot.
Okay, see, and this is my scene. I think that he had the men's association meeting the night before, but that's where he found out that they turned the wives into robots. And that's why he looks so down and teary-eyed, because he's making the decision, am I going to do this to my wife?
No, see, I think that this is when he has made the decision, but I think he knew well before this.
I totally disagree. I disagree. I mean, again, nothing in the film gives us an answer. So, I mean, I think both reads have justification.
Sure.
There's a word for that. But I guess I'm on the more empathetic side for early Walter, where I'm like, okay, like I don't think he knew moving into Stepford they were going to make her a robot, but I do think in this moment he has just found out that they're going to turn her into a robot.
Okay. But, listeners, I'm curious. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Trace?
Or can they both work?
I mean, yeah, sure, but that's less interesting.
It is less interesting, yeah. But either way, I do think, though, we can both agree this is the moment where he has decided to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we're around 24 minutes in. Let's introduce movie MVP, Bobbie Marco.
Oh my God, I love her so much.
Paula Prentiss is everything in this movie.
It was so funny. I was like, Paula Prentiss. Oh yeah, this is the woman that played Sue's mother, who is Amy Irving's mom and Carrie. And then I realized I got so confused because that's Priscilla Pointer. So it was my PPs that I was getting confused.
It's like, no, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, so I don't really know what I know Paula Prentiss from, but she is great in this movie.
Yeah, like I can understand why some people maybe feel that the direction in this film is a little flat. Like it does occasionally have a bit of a TV movie feel. I also don't know why that necessarily makes it a derogatory statement. Like, I don't think we need to come down on TV movies, especially in the 70s. They were kind of like an everyday thing. Like, they were huge. People made money off of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would then counter that by saying anytime Bobbie is on screen, the movie absolutely jumps up a couple of notches in terms of something exciting is happening. This is a performance. You know, we have energy.
It has the fire, the spark, and it also puts a spark in Joanna. Like, she becomes more interesting by virtue of Bobbie.
Well, I love that the introduction of these two characters is Joanna sitting in this field, which we will see is either the backyard or the front yard of this giant house. And she just looks like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my time? What am I meant to be accomplishing? She's so aimless. And then Bobbie just kind of runs through this field like, okay, here's my queer reading for this movie. I don't think that there's necessarily a lesbian relationship, but there is a lesbian vibe that happens when these two team up. It's a very Nancy Drew, and like, again, I'm going to go back to David Lynch. It's giving like Mulholland Drive, where there could be some sexual chemistry.
Okay.
I also think it's a very suspicious that we
never meet Bobbie's husband.
Okay, yeah. I looked on IMDb, and there is an actor that is cast as her husband. I looked him up. I put in, Stepford Wives 1975 into like a Google image search just to be like, okay, maybe this will jog my memory. And I saw him somewhere. I'm convinced we don't ever see this man.
No, we don't. I mean, because the one thing I remembered from this movie was the Bobbie character. I mean, obviously, the big scenes, the grocery scene, the robot scene, whatever. But but Bobbie as a character stood out so much, and for some reason, I had in my mind where I was like, I feel like Bobbie's coded lesbian in that movie, but I can't remember.
It's because she's so infatuated with Joanna, and even in this opening scene, they don't know each other, and she's just like, "Are you the photographer from New York? I'm also from New York. We should be best friends. We should do day drinking stuff. We should eat ring dings or ding rings or whatever these fucking things are. We should smoke cigarettes." And you just think, I mean, yeah, this is the desperation of a woman who is looking for adult conversation, some kind of stimulating, like, can we please just not talk about household cleaning supplies and other things like that? But there is, I truly do think that there is an undercurrent of, if the men weren't here, we could get together.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is, you want them to get together because
run away together.
Yeah, there is an explicit romance in these scenes, but I think, again, like, obviously we're picking up on it, but it's a thing where it's like their friendship is the heart and soul of this movie. And and so when one and then both of them fall prey to Stepford, it's devastating. Like,
it's soul crushing.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, I'll save it till we get there, because it is. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Like, I feel so badly for these women.
Well, and especially the way that they get dicked around. So let's talk about how the men's association shows up at Joanna's house. So Walter gives her a call and says, "Hey, are you okay if I bring home the guys?" And she's like, yeah, sure, I guess. And he says, "Cool, we'll be there in 20 minutes.
Yep.
Dick move. So he brings them around. He's showing them the Duncombe playroom. That's not for the kids. It's for him. You're just like, oh my God, it's a 1975 man cave. Which tells us, again, everything we need to know about Walter. But this first interaction between Joanna and Diz, who is played by Patrick O'Neill, this guy oozes nefariousness, even though Diz, not a character.
No, but I mean, he's a stereotype of a villain. Like, I mean,
yeah, but I love that about him. Like, he's introduced eavesdropping on the call that Walter makes to Joanna, saying, "Hey, I'm going to come by," and then he kind of goes, "You're not quite sold on Stepford yet, are you, Walter?" And you're just like, should you be petting a cat and working for Spectre, because you are giving massive Bond villain vibes right now.
Yeah, he was giving me James Coburn, and it just, like, I was living for this. And again, that line that you gave in the beginning where he tells Joanna, like, he's spying on her doing the dishes or something. I like to watch women doing little domestic chores, but
oh my God, douche chills.
Such a douche. And she's not impressed with him from the get-go.
I love it. She's just like, what is her response? I wrote it down.
Her response is, "You came to the right town," but like, they're walking away after she learns, he used to work at Disneyland, which is why he's called Diz, which, by the way, is a book carryover.
It is, yeah.
But she says something, and she just goes, "Oh, well, you don't look like someone who enjoys making other people happy."
Yes. Oh my God. It is the best fucking read in this movie. Yeah. It is so astute. She has just met this guy. It is minute 2 of their interaction, and she already has him completely clocked.
Yeah, 100%. And all these men, too.
Which is honestly one of the reasons why I love Joanna as a character. Because, like, okay, would I like her to fight back stronger in the end? Absolutely. Would I like to see her persevere and win, like in the 2004 version? Sure, yeah, whatever. But it was never going to happen in this film.
No.
But I love that she's not Rosemary. from Rosemary's Baby. Like, Joanna has spunk. She has moxie. She's not going to mince words. Like, she will say what is on her mind. And you can tell that that's part of the reason why Walter ends up justifying his fucking decision, because she won't fuck him in the yard, because she won't fuck him in front of the fire, because she says things like this to his friends. I love that they leave and she just goes, okay, so what do we think of those guys? They're total dummies, right? And he's like, what are you talking about? I like them. And she goes, who are you? This isn't you. Like,
Well,
what the fuck are you talking about?
But there is one man that Joanna likes, and it's this guy Ike Mazard, who's again some famous guy that she knows his name because he's been drawing her picture the entire time. And because again, he's drawing her picture for the robot machine.
Yes,
but I found it interesting that because of that, though, because he was drawing her picture, like, she kind of warms to him. And
well, it's also because he is a known artist or like illustrator. So this is a guy played by William Prince, but he doesn't make any kind of lecherous comments to her. He doesn't act like he owns the place, and she recognizes him because she's also from a creative field. So it plays on this idea that if you think you know someone, then you're far more likely to trust them.
Okay. That's better than my read, which was just like, oh, he drew her picture and panties open.
I don't think it's that. But I do love this idea that this entire evening was just a pretense so that we could do these drawings.
Well, anytime like the men are around Joanna for the rest of the movie, that's what they're doing. They're like getting stuff for the robot, which I think is a really cool, sneaky way of showing that without giving the men really their own storyline in this movie. Like, you know, we're not cutting to the men often like, oh, what are the men up to, you know?
Yeah. And so often we barely even see them without her or without someone else present. So I really like this telling moment where when she leaves the room to go and check on the kids, they've been talking and yammering about, oh, are we going to have a barn dance or are we going to do a cakewalk? And you're just like, oh my God, how many hours did you spend? Like, even if you're justifying this is also that we can build a robot to look like her so you can fuck it. What a waste of time. Like, take a picture. It'll last longer, you fucking idiots.
Well, they're stuck in Stepford for the rest of their lives. So, I mean, this
is what they do. They clearly have nothing better to do.
I know. Well, and that's the thing. Also, I'm just kind of like, wouldn't this get boring after a while? But I guess maybe that's the idea. Like, they're so simple, they don't get bored from just getting everything they want all the time.
I can see a more nefarious or exciting version of this movie being, how do we lure new people to Stepford because we're really bored of all of the robots that we have around town right now? Like, how do we get a black person in here? How do we get a gay person in here?
I guess, yeah, that is the entertainment. But also at a certain point, I mean, again, logic, not really a big thing here, but it's like, you also don't want this to become, well, I guess actually, maybe the idea is it would spread and spread and spread until it took over the whole country.
I don't think that. I've thought that a couple of times as well, but I think that this is like the town's dirty little secret. We don't want this to creep past the borders of Stepford because these guys also have control issues, like clearly, because they can't have a woman with a personality in their midst without wanting to turn her into a robot. But I think that these guys like the idea that they have created this perfect white middle-class suburban area that they can just control and pretend like it's Leave It to Beaver every day, all year, ever, forever and ever.
Just sounds so boring.
That's the thing. It sounds fucking boring. I would be Joanna. I would be Bobbie. I would be losing my mind. Okay, so yes, we have this fight over this men's group because they're boring, and Walter says, no, like, I'm totally fine.
Well, because she offers her thoughts, and his reply is, well, that's your opinion. And she's like, yes, it is my opinion.
Yes. And you very quickly realize, oh, he doesn't want to hear your opinion anymore.
No. He's signed that contract in blood already.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the barbecue. So, we mentioned the costumes earlier, and I love one of the things that, you know, the women, Joanna and Bobbie, show up, and it is short shorts, it's midriff, like we're wearing a lot of halter tops and backless stuff. They show up looking like, yeah, they're just going to a backyard barbecue. And everybody else looks like they're going to some chic as fuck garden party where the food is perfectly laid out. And I love that contrast, but also, I just have to say, 70s fashion for women, hot.
Yeah, these are like fashionable muumuus.
Yeah, like, I mean, I actually really like the costuming for the robots, but I also think that Bobbie and Joanna have, like, great casual style. Like, they both look amazing.
Bobbie's top is so good in this movie, in this scene. I love it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's got the glasses, and then she's got, I think it's like the cross boob halter. Women are screaming at us again. But.
Look, I just learned like 2 years ago what a tube top was.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
You grew up with them. They were a staple of 2000s fashion.
Well, it's one of those things where I knew, once I learned what they were, I was like, oh, those things. That's what they're called. But, you know.
Yeah. Wait until you learn what a bandage dress is. It'll blow your mind.
Oh, my God. I don't know what that is.
Have you seen Miss Congeniality?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yep. Oh, that's what that's called. Oh.
When Sandra Bullock does her like makeover slow walk before she eats shit. Yeah, that's a bandage dress.
I'm looking at it right now. Okay, had no idea that's what that was called. No idea.
No. Watch me have that completely wrong too.
No. You're right. I googled it. You're right.
Okay. Yes. So I love this comment from Joanna too, where she looks at the food and she says, you know, everything is perfect. So why don't I love it? Like, she just intuitively knows, her brain is telling her, this looks fine, everything is perfect, and yet you're not feeling it, and why can't you put your finger on it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's so good, because I feel like we've all been in those kinds of situations where you instinctively feel something in your gut, it's not quite clicking, and most of the time we will all just tell ourselves, no, you're overreacting, just go along with it. And Joanna and Bobbie don't do that in this movie.
No, not at all.
It just doesn't save them, which makes this movie so fucking dark.
I know.
Okay, so this is where Carol has her little glitch because she apparently did not get fixed at the robot factory after the fender bender, and I'll just die if I don't get this recipe.
Just walking around, talking to everybody, and they're like, oh, honey, they blame it on her drinking. Oh,
yes.
Honestly, like, this is, look, the men are already pretty hissable, like, at this point in the film, but even here, where it's like, I feel bad that this robot is being abused in this
right?
movie.
Yeah, because, okay, so she makes a public spectacle of herself and she has to be escorted away by Diz. And then we cut to the scene where she is showing up at Joanna's house with Bobbie there, apologizing, saying, oh, you know, one of the reasons we moved to Stepford is because my drinking had gotten out of control. And Joanna and Bobbie are both just like, why is she apologizing? There's nothing to apologize for.
Oh, and they flat out ask her, like, you mean the men made you come and apologize? Like, they're aghast that this is even happening to them.
Yeah, because, again, second wave feminism is just like, why are you doing anything that isn't for you? Never mind what your fucking husband tells you to do. You are your own person.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on this interaction, they say, you know what? I think we need a women's association in this town. We need to liberate this. We need to liberate this bitch up, is what they say. So then we get this scene where they go from housewife to housewife to housewife and try to say, hey, if we had a meeting, would you want to come and do this? And all of the women are too busy with their child rearing and their baking.
There's a delivery, yeah, because I think they asked one of the wives, does it bother you something like there's not a women's club or that the men do this, and the wife just is like, does it ever bother me? Pause. No. Nope.
Like, it had never even occurred to me. It's still not occurring to me. Yeah, I don't think many of the women stand out. Like, we're about to introduce Charmaine, who is my second favorite character in this movie.
I mean, and I did recognize her at least, because that's Ginger from Gilligan's Island, but she does not get nearly enough to do in this movie.
No, she's here to burn bright and then get roboticized immediately. And I love it because you think, okay, well, that means that Bobbie and Joanna are kind of out of the firing line because we've lost a character that we like, so we don't have to worry it'll happen to them because they're already onto it. Like, Charmaine only just started to get there. And no, it's just like, oh, you see what happened to Charmaine? It's going to hurt even more when we do it to Bobbie in about 25 minutes.
Yep. Oof.
But first, we do also have to swing by the Cornwell's house. This is the pharmacist and his robotic wife. And they're engaging in some overly enthusiastic afternoon delight. And this dialogue. Oh, Frank, no one has ever touched me like this before.
Yeah, this feels like those ASMR like pornos that go out now where it's just that's what this sounded like to me.
This was AI generated nonsense where you're just like, oh, is this where porno writers get it from? Like, oh, yeah, baby. Hit me like that. I've never felt so good.
Nobody's ever touched me the way you touch me. Oh, there, you're the best. Oh, God, you're the best. Mm-hmm. Oh, there, oh, God, you're the best. You're the king. You're the champion. You're the master. Like that.
I was going to say, all we needed is, it's so big. I've never been touched this way before. Yeah. It is wild. But I love that we don't even walk in on them, which I think an inferior film would do. We just have Bobbie and Joanna downstairs in the foyer being like, are we going to listen for a couple of minutes?
Which the answer is yes. Yes, absolutely.
Which you absolutely would. And then they laugh because it's so fucking ridiculous. And then they leave.
Well, because also they'll see who the guy is later and be like, that guy?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Which, you know what? Like, anybody can be a great lover. It's more about how you use it as opposed to how big it is or small it is.
For sure. But, like, the performative nature of this woman's orgasms are ridiculous.
Yeah. Patty, we're calling you out. It was a little fake. Okay, so yes, we go to Charmaine last. She has a whole backyard tennis court, and she is very eager to play with somebody who can actually give her a match. Also, unlike every other woman in town, she has a housekeeper named Nettie. Who is Nettie, Trace?
Oh my God, Dee Wallace.
Dee Wallace, playing a German housekeeper with, one line of dialogue in this movie?
This is her film debut. This is the first thing she ever did.
Is it?
Yeah, her next film after this is The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh my God, what a jump.
Oh my God, Jesus. Yeah, I was like, because I'm like, E.T. is kind of what makes her famous, but it's like, Stepford Wives, then Hills Have Eyes, then 10, which I didn't know she was in, the Bo Derek movie, and then The Howling, then E.T.
Wow, what a run.
I've never seen 10, but I just know it's that Bo Derek movie where she has the braids.
Right, on the beach.
On the beach, yep, that one.
Yeah. That I know how I know that one.
How?
Because there was a guy in my college dorm who had the poster in his room.
Oh my God. My dad loved it. Like, my dad always talked about Bo Derek and the braids. Oh, wow. You know why? Because whenever we went to Mexico, like on a family vacation, my sister always got them. I know. My sister, granted, she was like,
I was going to say,
10.
This was a different time, and we were culturally appropriating all over the place.
But every time my dad was like, oh yeah, you're going to get them Bo Derek braids. I'm like, well, they're not Bo Derek's braids, but yeah.
I mean, to a generation, they probably are.
They absolutely are.
Well, for the wrong reasons, but still, yes. Yeah. White people, they were Bo Derek braids. Yay. Oh my God. Okay. So yes, Charmaine, redhead, lovely. You know, they say, hey, would you ever want to come to this thing where women could get together? And she's like, oh, a bitching session? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking love her.
Yeah, this is Charmaine. She makes so much of an impression with 2 or 3 scenes?
I think so. Yeah. Okay, so we also introduce a stutterer. I think we've seen him previously. He may have been at the Men's Association night, but this is Claude. He is played by George Coe, and he is asking Joanna to do this project that helps him with his stutter. And you're like, he does have a stutter, so it's not like he's fully making it up, but this is just another insidious way to grab another piece of the robotic puzzle. Well, I love that he gives her, how thick is this document? It looks 500 pages thick.
I mean, he tells her to write down her complete living history, record her voice, etc., all this other stuff. And, and she's like, oh, well, why are you doing this? Oh, it's a lifelong hobby.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do love that she doesn't just say complacently, oh, sure, I'll help you out with this nonsense project of yours. She says, well, tell you what, if you get the girls to come to this thing that I'm trying to put together, I will help you with this. And he says, oh, isn't that like blackmail? And she's like, suck it, dick. If you want this, then help me out.
But he does. And we do get a women's association meeting.
We do, except it doesn't quite go to plan because only Charmaine says anything interesting, and then the others get stuck on, I was calling it easy off. It's easy on.
No, but Charmaine's confessional, though, is...
Ed never loved me. He married me because I was TV, friendly.
And this endears me... I guess
so much instantly.
I guess would we call this stunt casting? Because I mean, she's playing a variation of herself in this movie, but it's so sad. Like with this one little monologue, we are endeared to this character so much, and I guess that's why we lose her in 2 scenes.
Yeah, but it's funny, right? Because I mean, again, not to harp on the idea that women didn't like this movie at the time, but I don't know how you look at the scene and you don't think, oh, I know exactly who Charmaine is. Like, whether you want to say within the world of the film or as an embodiment of women's issues in the real world. And we're not doing that with any of the men. So clearly the movie is interested in telling women's stories.
Well, I don't know about you, but if time is your enemy, make friends with Easy-On. That's all I can tell you.
Oh my God. I could have so easily seen her just pull it out of her purse and be like, Easy-On, the time saver.
If time is your enemy, make friends with Easy-On.
What a fucking slogan. But even her statement, I would do the commercial for free. They wouldn't even have to pay me. It is terrifying. And the look, the deer in the headlight look that Joanna exchanges with Bobbie. This is not how I thought this was going to go. I don't mean to be the person who's going to dictate how this is going to go, but what the fuck, ladies?
Yeah.
It's amazing. I kind of love it. Okay, so that night, Walter is barely even listening to Joanna. He is so tuned out on their marriage, barely even paying attention to her. She says, I'm going to go walk the dog in the bathroom. And he's like, okay, dear.
Are you a robot yet?
More or less. I'm waiting for my fuckbot to arrive. I just have to wait the 4 months.
Yeah.
So... she goes to walk the dog, and this is where we see the men's association going through the bedroom, looking at her clothes and figuring out the size and the specs so that they can duplicate this, as we will see at the end of the film.
I love how organized they are, because we'll learn at some point that, basically, after living in Stepford for 4 months, that's when you turn into a Stepford wife. And it's because they clearly have this, down to a T, the timeline of getting all the information to build the robot.
Yep. Yeah, they know exactly what they need to do and when. And I love this attention to detail because I would never think, you need to get the robot acclimatized to familiar things so that you can more perfectly, quote unquote, embody this real human being. But something like, we need to give you a facsimile room for you to get comfortable in so that you can become Joanna. It's just that extra level of, gross.
100%.
Okay, so she's out walking the dog. This is where the police officer comes back for the second of 3 times. So he basically says, hey, there's the house you're going to run to in the climax. So we've laid that groundwork. But also, you probably shouldn't be out around at night. You shouldn't be out walking after dark. And she goes, I thought that's why I left the city. Love it.
Just but go away. You definitely shouldn't pay attention to this mansion behind me. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Okay, so she does end up leaving, and then this is where we see Diz driving a sweaty-looking Ed, who was played by Franklin Cover. And we haven't met Ed before, but we have heard Charmaine mention Ed in her confession. And he just looks very sweaty and very unkempt to the point that Diz switches sides with him to drive. And we understand, Charmaine is next.
Very much. Honestly, it plays out kind of like a bit of a slasher film, right? And I think maybe that's why. Well, I guess maybe none of this, because the slasher film wouldn't be a thing yet. This comes out the year after Black Christmas, but...
Yeah, but Black Christmas technically hasn't come out in the US yet.
Right. But either way, though, so we lose, Charmaine, who's the least, the one we know the least, even though, again, great fucking monologue. And, okay, well, at least we have Joanna and Bobbie. Well, then we lose Bobbie. And then it's okay, well, Joanna's our final girl, but she doesn't make it.
Yeah. And we never see the bodies, so it's not like Invasion of the Body Snatchers where we're sort of able to track, we don't actually even learn what happens to the human corpses. We just have to assume that they get disposed of, but we are losing real human beings and getting them replaced with these very subservient. Yeah, obviously they're robots, but as far as we know, they're just mindless cleaning machines.
Yeah, and that's where the remake just... I think to have the bite of the satire, I do think it's necessary for these women to be killed.
Yeah, as grim as it is.
Oh, it's very grim, but I think that hammers the point home.
It's just something, like the men are so comfortable with the idea of having this mindless fuckbot around the house that they become comfortable killing their wives, like signing a death warrant on their wives so that they can have someone who looks hot, gets a breast augmentation. And the thing that really bothers me, especially the more I think about the film, the more I watch the movie, these kids are going to grow up with a robot mom. Well, and are they expected to not know that is a different person? Because these robots so clearly act differently.
Well, I think, though, if you get them when they're young enough, then they will grow up just forgetting about their original mother, which is even more tragic. But what I think about often is, we don't know if a man has ever rejected the offer of the men's association. And if they have, what happens to them? I have to assume they get murdered.
Yeah, or if you read my reading, you would never even be allowed to move to town or buy a house unless you were sort of brought into the fold. That's part of the indoctrination sort of job interview process.
Or the idea is, no man would ever turn that down.
Yeah, you know what? Ding, 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 ding. I think you just, especially in the world of this film.
Yeah. With the messaging this film is trying to convey.
Yeah. Okay, so Welcome Wagon Lady does inform Joanna and Bobbie that a black family might be moving in, and then
this is what it is. I don't know if I think it's good, but I think it's natural. What?
Yeah. Isn't it funny when someone who's not white exists in the world? I think that's natural.
It's not good, but it's natural.
Oh my God. Yeah. But this also comes with the reveal that, the town is super liberal. We used to have a women's organization that was a vibrant community. We had 50 women in it. And the president of this was Carol?
Carol.
Yeah. I do like the fact that she says, we just never accomplished anything. So we just disbanded it. I think it's Bobbie who says, oh, so you could do more house cleaning? Okay, this is a bit of a mystery that the film never fully clarifies. I'm curious to see if you have any insight. So Joanna goes back to New York briefly so that she can sell some of these nonsense pictures she's been taking. And we see Fred the dog in a cage in the back of somebody's truck. We never see who takes him. We learn later that the dog has been delivered to Joanna Robot because he's there in the room at the end.
Yeah.
Is this to help the women or the robots get used to a dog? Or is it because the dogs can spot a robot and they don't adjust well?
Because I thought they had killed the dog, truthfully, because I think Diz is holding the dog in that final scene. I don't know. I will say this is something the remake does that I did get a laugh of, because whenever Nicole Kidman's doing the research and she's like, oh my God, all these women used to be powerful businesswomen, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
They have a really poorly CGI robot dog in their smart house. And so when she's doing the research, she looks and there's a newspaper clipping of a prized show winning dog disappears.
No, they turned the dogs into robots too.
Yeah.
Well, that's so stupid.
But in this movie, I don't know what the idea is. I have to assume it's obviously the dogs will be able to tell the difference between the real person and the robot. So yeah, maybe it's getting the dogs used to the robot, not the other way around.
Oh, yeah. You know what? That makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. You said it out loud, and I realized, that's very clearly what they're doing.
You were halfway there.
You know what? Yeah. 50%. That's all I can manage at the best of times. So, okay. This is when we discover that Charmaine has been taken and replaced because we are tearing up that prized tennis court. Yeah. Because, she went on a weekend trip to Vermont and now all she wants to do is please Ed.
Which, that again, whenever Bobbie's like, I'm going on a weekend trip with my husband, I'm like, girl, no.
Yeah. Yeah, you were just talking about how you were definitely making plans to move, how you were looking at houses outside of the vicinity. Like, but here's the thing, right? You don't think it's your husband who's planning to do it. You think it's someone shady like Diz, right?
Yeah.
I think you would have to believe, unless you were having significant marital problems, that your husband would not sell you out this way. Like, can you imagine if you had a couple of fights with Hari and then all of a sudden it was like, well, he signed the paperwork and now you're a robot?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, so I said yes. Like, no, yes, I know what you're saying. No, I can't imagine that happening.
Blink twice if you're a robot. Oh, wait, it's an audio medium. Shit. Okay. So this is where, like, when Charmaine switches gears, this is where Bobbie starts to get really freaked out. So she introduces the concept of the Texas tranquilizer, which is, I don't know if this is a real thing. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that it was, but this idea that there are way more people in El Paso, but fewer murders than in another place. And it's because something was kind of in the water, keeping people a bit sedate.
Right. Mm-hmm. Again, just full conspiracy mode.
Yeah, well, it's the best thing that we've got, right? It's the it follows methodology. We think it's going to be this. Let's test it, see what happens, even though we don't really have anything to go on. So we say, let's take a water sample. We should also note that as Bobbie is telling Joanna all of this, we do go in the car past all of these robotics, computer, factory kind of, which, again, like, I moved to a small town in Connecticut, but we've got all of these super sophisticated computer technology companies.
I guess that's the thing, though, is, I mean, because admittedly, if like, audiences in 75 hadn't read the book, like, they don't know that these are robots. Like, no one knows that these are robots until later. And that would not be the first thing that people would expect, I think, because they look so real. Like,
sure,
technology in 75 wasn't up to these standards. So I don't think that would be anyone's first guess in the world of the film, that it's robots. Brainwashing would be the first thing I would go to.
Well, I think that's why this is in here. I think some people could say, oh, this is kind of shoddily plotted. I mean, what's the deal with the water testing stuff? But I think it's because we know something weird is going on and we're trying to figure out what is it. And if you're paying attention, you think, oh, yeah, there is a lot of computers. Maybe it is something robotic, but it's being introduced at the same time as this water thing. So because the characters go with it, we as the audience go with it.
Right. But also, because the scene isn't just, oh, let's go get the water tested. It's because the guy they bring the water to is someone that Joanna used to fuck 12 years ago, or I guess was in the relationship she was in before Walter. And
yes.
And he hits on her. Like, when he passes her that note that says, I'm not happy either, or like, I'm unhappy too, I was like,
I'm not happy in my marriage either.
Oh my God. Like,
yeah. But Trace, you're bearing arguably the funniest fucking joke in this entire movie.
You got water in your water?
No, it's that this guy is named Raymond Chandler. And this means nothing to you.
No,
Raymond Chandler is one of the most famous novelists who was working in noir. So he, like, this idea that Joanna and he had this kind of running gag where she would just egg him on about, like, oh, okay, are you going to do these things where you're a hard-boiled detective, where I'm a femme fatale and all this other stuff? Like, it's such a funny joke if you understand the reference, and you clearly,
I definitely do not.
You don't know it, so it didn't land for you. But I love this idea that, yeah, just in this movie, randomly, we have a character named Raymond Chandler. We acknowledge that it's ridiculous, and then we actually get to meet this guy who is played by Robert Fields. And yeah, like it starts as a joke, and then it kind of gets devastating because you see Joanna made the safe, rational decision. Like, she could have gone with this chemist guy that she clearly had good sexual chemistry with because he deflowered her, and they still have something because he's willing to test the water for her. But you get the impression that this is a sliding doors kind of situation, right? If she had stayed with Raymond Chandler, the chemist, then she would be living in New York City, and she would probably be living a totally perfectly fine life.
Yeah.
And because she went with the safe option, the lawyer, she ended up getting turned into a fucking robot in Connecticut.
Now I want to watch Sliding Doors.
I do like Sliding Doors.
Also a downer movie. Oh, sorry, half downer. Wow. It's half downer, half happy.
50%. I will never forget the line, hearing it way too young and being like, wait, what? Did Gwyneth Paltrow just say, and sometimes if I'm not too tired, I go home and give my boyfriend a blowjob.
Yep, she does.
Off target.
Off topic, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so it's this sad moment that gives you some insight into Joanna is a real person. She has had multiple sexual partners, even though I guess only 2 because she was with Raymond Chandler and then she went and married Walter. But just this idea that, yeah, you know, choices will affect your future. And because I think one of the ways to read this film is that Joanna becomes a little complacent in her sort of white middle-class privilege. Like, had we not agreed to go to Connecticut where it was safe and really boring, we might not have ended up in this situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one final blow before she leaves is when he asks her, like, oh, you know, did we blow it? And she says, it's hard to be smart.
Oh, I wrote that line down too, and I agree with it. Like, ignorance is bliss, right?
A little bit, yeah. Like, would this be easier for her if she didn't know it was coming?
Yeah. Well, yes, the answer is yes, but it's also doesn't make it any less tragic.
No, that is true, yeah. Because no one should be turned into a robot against their will. You should have to consent to it.
Yeah, we have consent. That's what this movie's about.
Okay, so we get back on the road, and this is when Bobbie declares, I'm absolutely getting the fuck out of here. I'm going to move. And then that night, we see Joanna finish the recording project. So we know we're starting to get deeper and thicker into it. But she uses this as an opportunity. So we finish this bullshit project. She goes up to the bedroom where Walter is in bed, and she says, Walter, I want to move. And he agrees. He says, it just can't be right now. Like, we're going to wait until August. And in hindsight, you understand, oh, this will be after the 4 months. So he's just placating her.
Mm-hmm. But I actually forgot that we go to a realtor meeting. Like, we go to another neighborhood. We're looking at a house. We're like, cool, this is great.
You're talking about Mrs. Cargassa, who is played by Martha Greenhouse. I love that Bobbie describes her as fat and lovely with a big mouth. And we love her. Yeah, like this is just a fun kind of character beat. I think the movie is actually really filled with these. And the only one that is around a man is Raymond fucking Chandler. And all of the rest of these moments belong to women. The women in this movie pop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even this realtor.
Yeah, exactly. So this is when Bobbie asks Joanna, hey, can you take the kids and the dog? Because I'm going away on a romantic getaway. And we all just go, wait, Spidey sense. Don't do this. I will say, the scenes with Joanna and Walter trying to negotiate, it looks like about 7 kids and 1 giant fucking dog in this house. Yeah. It looks like chaos. It's quite fun, especially when Joanna realizes, oh, I'm on a creative streak. I'm taking all these pictures, and Walter cannot handle anything.
It sucks, though, because, I mean, not to say that Walter would ever change his mind, but, like, this scene, like, if he was ever even doubting, like, turning her into a robot, like, this pretty much makes the deal. Because he says, what am I supposed to do to entertain these kids? She's like, figure it out. I do it 7 days a week.
Yeah, she's a little curt with him, and you're absolutely right. This is probably the nail in the coffin.
There you go.
I mean, at this point, it's already well past the point of no return. That's why he said August, because this robot is nearly ready, but this does not help her case.
No, not at all. No. And not to say that she is wrong in this scenario, but Walter thinks she is.
Well, he's just like, oh, my bitch wife. Obviously, I'm making the right decision because soon I'm never going to have to deal with this shit. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we take our photos because we're very excited about them, and we go back to New York to show them to this guy. And again, it's giving such Nina from Black Swan vibes where she says, am I crazy to this guy? Like, are they good? And he says, yeah, they're pretty good. And she's like, well, you just said something different a minute ago. Which is it? And she's so clearly seeking validation. And I choose to read this in part because she's not getting anything like this from Walter. Like, she's starved for reinforcement and support.
Recognition.
Exactly. Yeah, like, clearly she has never gotten this from her husband. But part of me is also just like, no, girl, you know that these are good. I personally disagree.
I was like, you don't think they're good?
In the movie, she feels like she has had a breakthrough and she's very excited by it. And she still needs the approval of this man. But the phrasing, am I crazy, from a woman is so spot on, because as a society, we always tell women, don't be hysterical, you're acting crazy.
Well, because this is the last moment of like really true happiness Joanna will get in this movie. And
independence.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, 100%.
It's proof that she belongs in New York. This is where she can feed her creative vision. She never should have left. She shouldn't have listened to Walter.
Right.
I also love the fact that she drops her fucking maiden name when she says, like, because he says, well, why are you doing this? What do you want to get out of this? And she says, I want to be remembered. And then she says, like, I want to be remembered for my maiden name, Joanna Ingalls.
Yep.
You're just like, damn, she might have actually left Walter given the option, or at least establish herself independently of him as a creative artist.
Yeah.
And then we're like, cool, she's finally making it happen. So, of course, the movie just guts us, because this is when we discover that Bobbie has been taken.
Oh, this is... I think it's also because, like, you know, I think it makes it more tragic because... Granted, at this point, we don't know Bobbie is dead. Like, we don't know that that's the robot. But once we realize it, it's like, oh, like, this person is gone.
Yes.
But they're still here.
Yeah.
And so it makes it impossible, even for a viewer, to, like, grieve the loss of this person because they're still there in a capacity.
Mm-hmm. It's such a different feeling from what I have at the end of the film. And I'm not going to lie, you know, all you need to do is throw on black contacts on an actor and all of a sudden it's really fucking scary and creepy. But there's something, you're right. So it's really sad. It's really tragic. But also it feels like, no, Bobbie is still here because I'm interacting with her. It's just not the Bobbie I know. It truly does feel like it's a sidestep away from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like,
yeah,
you're still the person I know and that I love, but also you're not. And I have to acknowledge the fact that I guess that means you're actually dead.
Yeah. But you know what? If you're going to tell me you don't like this dress, I'm sticking my head right in the oven.
Oh, boy. Like, even your mode of suicide is domestic.
Right? Oh, my God.
Not to belittle suicide or anything, but
no, I know.
I do think it's fascinating too that one of the things that we as an audience immediately notice, oh my God, she's dressed like all the Stepford Wives. Mm-hmm. Blah. And Joanna says, you're wearing makeup, like you're cooking and cleaning in makeup. And it's such a non-Bobbie thing to do. It's so specific, but I love it, right? Like Bobbie is naturalistic. We have not seen, I mean, we've seen her with movie makeup on, but in the world of the film, this is completely uncharacteristic behavior, but it's like, it's a female thing that Joanna clocks immediately.
100%. But what does Joanna notice in this kitchen? But there's a hand-drawn drawing of Bobbie that Ike did.
Yeah, I kind of wish that the movie would just let us see it as opposed to actually cutting and showing it to us. Like, I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. She also got drawn by Ike.
Yeah, but I think it's important for Joanna to see it because this is when she's putting it together.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
And you're right. She does notice it. I mean, if she didn't notice that Bobbie is obviously acting like a fucking robot.
Sure, but I think this is when she's realizing, oh, this is going to happen to me too.
Yeah. And her immediate response is, I mean, is she auditioning to become a stunt driver? Because she tears out in the car and she's clipping mailboxes and she is nearly running down children.
Yep. And Walter's just like, you're crazy. Go to a shrink.
Mm-hmm. You're crazy. Go to the shrink. He's mad that they're fighting in front of the kids, which is clearly another one of these. Well, when Robot Mom shows up on the scene, this will never happen again. So I don't want to have to try to explain why we're fighting now because it will give me a couple of days.
Yeah,
you'll never see this again.
Just shut up for a day.
I love the gaslighting that he does here. Love. But he says, I'm not asking anything unreasonable.
Oh, yeah.
And then he says, it's you who wants to disrupt our lives. you have to see that. Emphasis mine, but it's just like he's putting all the blame on her. He's using you statements as if like you're the fucking problem. I'm the person who's being perfectly rational. You are insane. And you're just like, oh, wow, it is epic. It's top notch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so just in case we didn't understand that seeing a therapist is not going to be the way to go, we have a dead rat floating in this pool.
Okay, but this therapist, I think, is for the most part a good therapist.
Okay, this was the thing that I've been building up to because I wanted to know.
So you don't think?
I think she's in on it.
Really?
She sends her back, Trace.
Yeah, but she says, because I'm only going to be gone for a couple... Wait, that
I'm gone for a conveniently long period of time during which you will be turned into a robot.
Fuck.
But you should go back. You should definitely get the kids who are not there, because the kids have been audio recorded and we're using it to lure you into the mansion.
Man. Yeah, because I was just thinking the whole time, I was okay, she's just telling me to wait a couple days, like, go get your kids, like... I
mean, here's the thing. You were perfectly right for thinking all that, because the first thing that this Dr. Fancher, who is played by Carol Eve Rosen, says is, you seem like a bright young woman. So she's telling Joanna exactly what she needs to hear. I'm listening. I'm hearing you. I accept you as a person in all the ways that the men in your life don't. But that's how she gets Joanna to do what she needs her to do.
But what she is telling her is, you should leave town until you feel safe, but go get your kids. So that to me is a normal thing to tell a mother about her children.
Yeah, but this is like a different form of gaslighting, right? Like if everything in this movie is about the domestic sphere, then of course you would play on Joanna's need to be a mother. Like, you can't just run off. You can't just abandon your children. You have to be a good mother. So go back and get them. And that's ultimately Joanna's downfall. Because if she hadn't gone back for the kids, she would be fucking safe.
I know. Okay, but like, really, like, what? And
what mother would?
I messaged you offline, and I was like, oh my God, Joanna, just forget your kids and leave. Like, it's fine. But really, no mother is going to do that.
No.
But I guess, too, like, this therapist isn't acting like a robot, which I guess might be the point. But I'm like, well, then why
she's on the payroll, maybe?
Maybe. But then, but see though, if we're talking about the feminist messaging of this movie specifically, I don't believe they would put a human woman in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is the subject of a lot of hypothesis on the internet. Like, I found a full Reddit thread of people being like, is she in on it? Is she not? Because she's saying all the right things. And you're right. Do we really think that these men who can't stand a woman to say a single fucking thing out of line, are they really going to trust that this doctor is going to steer victims back into the robotic fold? It seems dicey. And yet, I mean, I think part of this, how we often make claims of like, well, women always have to support women, because if not, it's like, you're not a feminist. I think that this role, to me, if I believe that she is nefarious, it's like, women can't always trust that other women will have their back because they are part of the patriarchy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally get that. Like, I just, again, based on like what Forbes has said about this being like anti-man, how he was kind of battling the feminists, and I was like, I don't fully buy into that, but I do think the film lends itself to all these reads because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Ira Levin's novel also similarly ambiguous about what exactly is going on?
Yes, like we understand that it is robots and that Diz, developed all of this stuff when he worked at Disneyland. So like the reference that Joanna even makes in the scene where she says, I'll be like one of those robots in Disneyland. That's what we are led to believe is happening. But, because it's Joanna's point of view, we only get as far as she gets. So she sees the robot counterpart and then book's over.
Well, I will say, though, the line that stood out for me in this scene is, if I'm wrong, I'm insane. And if I'm right, it's worse than if I'm wrong. And it's like the worst catch-22 you can have.
Uh-huh. Yeah, like there is no escape for her.
No. I mean, she would have to leave her family, like everything. Which she should have done, but hindsight's 2020.
I'm glad that you said that line because that line hit really hard. I think to me, it embodies the position that a lot of women find themselves in, probably in 1975, definitely nowadays. It's that damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, there is no winning solution if you are a woman.
And Ross sells the hell out of this. Like, it is
she's so fucking good.
Devastating. Yeah, really, really, really good.
Because at this, you're right. She's realized my fucking life is over.
Yeah.
Like, I'm either fleeing, hopefully with my children, but like my marriage is done. What is she going to do for money?
Well, and she realizes the 4 months timeline. Like, she's like, it's about to happen to me.
Oh, it's terrifying. You know that something is going to happen if you go home. And you're like, but I have to go home to get my fucking kids.
Yep. Don't have kids.
It's so good. Yeah. You know what? The true message of this movie, don't have kids.
Feminism, don't have kids.
I mean, it is a bit like a battered wife syndrome, right? Where especially women who have kids, they are so much more susceptible to getting locked into the cycles of abuse because you can't just run away on your own. You've got to think of the kids.
Yeah.
It's awful. Okay. So we go home. And it starts to storm, and the movie basically turns into a domestic thriller because Walter is scary and unhinged. He is drinking. He's yelling. He won't tell her where the kids are. He's ordering her to lie down, which I just found super condescending.
And I'm not giving any kind of like generosity to Walter here, but I do think this is him still conflicted. Like, I mean, he's made the decision. He's going to do it, but I still think it's a thing where it's like, oh, right, my wife is going to get murdered tonight, and that's why he's drunk himself out like this, which is a very cowardly way to approach this. If you're going to kill your wife, go kill your wife.
You know what? You should have to do it. It should have to be him who does it. Like, oh, you want this so bad? Fine, take her out yourself.
100%. But they have, like everything else, have the robots do it.
Yeah, he's a big old wimp. So, and he's so powerless. I remembered him trying to break down the door when she locks herself in the bedroom, and he doesn't. He just goes and calls Diz because he's a wimp. So she ends up sneaking out. This is when she goes to Bobbie's. I mean, at this point, she thinks that the kids might be there, but I think in reality, this is a bit of a Hail Mary, like maybe I can get her to come back or help me or something. And it just doesn't work. And Bobbie is exactly the same. I do also love the switch from alcohol to coffee. Oh, yeah. I also love the callback to the archaic because earlier in the film, Bobbie uses the word archaic and one of the Stepford Wives doesn't know what it is. And so Joanna's just like, well, what does archaic mean? And Bobbie doesn't know. Bobbie, I love it. And Joanna's like, oh, because it wasn't in that fucking book. Yep. So good. I think that's a really clever callback. I do too. Okay. So this is when Joanna, I mean, this is off the charts level. Okay, you are frantic and you are, because you're stabbing your best friend now. Which, by the way, apparently Catherine Ross could not do it. Like, she was like, just the process of stabbing Paula Prentiss was just upsetting to her. So this is Forbes' hand that stabs Paula Prentiss. Really? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. I can't even imagine what emotions would be like when you're trying to work yourself up to this. But also the idea of even having somebody point, a prop gun at me freaks me the fuck out. Oh, I know. But then, again, we have our robot glitches. How could you do a thing like that? I was just going to give you coffee. I thought we were friends. I was just going to give you coffee. I thought we were friends. Yeah. Poor Bobbie. This is the last that we will see of her, but yeah. Okay, so we see Walter being reassured by the cop who is ever present, just kind of, I mean, this is where you feel the net start to tighten because the cop says, don't worry, the phones are out, we've got the roads blocked, and we're gonna get her. Yeah. So Joanna manages to sneak into the house. She whacks Walter with a fire poker, and it's very satisfying. Oh, yeah. And he tells her, I love the way he plays this because this is definitely a performance. Like, she has whacked him, he's bleeding, but he knows enough to say, well, all I got to do is get her to the association headquarters. Yeah. So the kids are at the mansion. Like, yep. Yeah. At that point, I would just be like, why? Why the fuck are my kids at that mansion? Yeah. But she doesn't have time to question because she's so desperate to get out of here. So cue the lightning and thunder. She goes in. I want to say, I think we can have complaints about how other parts of this film are shot, or if you feel like it's a little too slow, the pacing isn't quite there, this part of the film I find very atmospheric. Like,
which is why it's funny that Ebert didn't like this part of it.
I mean, it's more conventional horror film or thriller, but I also feel like that's what we've been working up to. This is the moment of truth. We're building to the big fucking doppelganger reveal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to be in Frankenstein's laboratory with the thunder and the lightning going off, because that's where we are. We're building robots.
Yeah. Also, I could be wrong, but I'm 90% certain I read this, that the mansion in this one is the same as the mansion in the remake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think...
Oh, that's fun.
Maybe not the interior, but the exterior. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like I read that somewhere, so everyone enjoy that if it's true. If it's not, then I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? If it's true, then it's a shame. And if it's not true, it's even worse. Okay, so Diz, yes, has lured her upstairs with a recording of the children, and this is when you're just like, fuck, she is screwed. But... okay. He gets to do this. It's not quite a villain monologue, but everything that he is saying is so scary. Like, it's perfect for us and perfect for you.
She says, why? And his response is, because we can. And is that not like The Strangers for you?
I mean, it is, but it's also such a condemnation on men.
Oh, 100%. Like, because we can.
Because we can. Because we're men and we want domesticity and docile. Like, we want subservience because we can get it.
Mm-hmm.
So she tries to run, but she doesn't really know where she's going. I think she's still looking for the kids, if we're being honest. But,
which at this point, I'm like, girl, they ain't there.
Leave the kids. Jump out a window.
Okay, I wrote in my notes, jump out a window.
Mm-hmm. Get yourself out of there. Like, leave town, get state troopers or something, come back for the kids. What are they going to do? They're going to abandon the whole town? No.
So, okay. I know I said at the top of this, I wasn't finding a lot of 50-year like retrospectives, but I did find one for this. It was done last month in February, but this is on a site called Frame Rated, and it's just called 2025 Retrospective, and the author is Barnaby Page. But addressing Joanna's lack of fight in this finale. And it'll continue once we get to the robot in a bit. But what he writes is, it would radically alter the meaning of the Stepford Wives if Joanna were a kick-ass superwoman. As well as posing credibility problems, a man willing to replace his wife with a robot would not have married such a woman in the first place, which is funny because that's what the remake does. She is certainly a modern woman with a part-time independent career as a photographer, but also a realistic woman who takes care of the kids as well as being interested in feminism. The rhythm of housework and parenting in her own life is very visible in Levin's novel, surely deliberately. She is not vulnerable to the men's association because she is especially weak. She is just normal.
Yeah.
There is not that much of a difference between her and the Stepford Wives. Women like her have only made some progress towards equality, and it is that limited progress which the men are determined to negate. This is the point.
Yeah, like they're scared of women becoming more independent. You know, again, if we think this is 5 years after that 50,000 women's march, men are terrified. Like, oh, hello, look at the world that we're currently living in.
Yep.
White men are terrified of losing power and privilege, and they will do anything to stomp on marginalized people. Yeah, and to keep it. So this idea that we can, and that, like, I think Diz even praises her, like, oh, you're one of the best that we've ever kind of come up against. And you're just like, she's a normal woman.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I just mean, like, Diz is so uneducated about what women can and should be that he thinks that Joanna, who is like regular mom, regular semi-professional photographer, he's just like, oh my God, my mind is blown by you. And it's like, yeah, because you're trapped in this 1950s mentality that women can only be one fucking thing. Like, you fucking misogynist.
And I like that, you know, it's okay. They're not like Betty Friedan. She just is a woman that has more like liberal ideals, but she's not the Betty Friedan. And that's the point, you know, just because she is mildly liberated, that's too much for these men.
Yeah, like she occasionally wants to do something and ask Walter to look after the kids. Oh my God, turn her into a robot yesterday.
And that's the satire. That's where the satire comes in.
Yeah, the dark satire.
Very dark. So, Joe, where do we go from here?
Okay, so we find ourselves in a facsimile of our bedroom at home. Brett the dog is there. I don't think the direction in this movie is fantastic, but I do love the decision to shoot this from Joanna's point of view. So we get this slow pan across the room and we all have to wait for the reveal of Joanna sitting at this makeup table. She's in a sheer nightie, so we can see the tits. We can see
that are bigger.
Part of the down unders. The tits are noticeably bigger.
Yeah.
And just like the substance, this was... Trace, this is a woman wearing a breastplate.
I'm never, honestly, go back and listen to Night of the Demons, everyone. Like, I am never going to live that down.
The funniest thing. Yeah, Night of the Demons and the Substance is when we talked about it. But yeah, so she stands up, this doppelganger, and the black contacts. It is a lo-fi solution, and it is fucking scary.
It's really, really good. So apparently they wanted the eyes to look like black holes and not have a shine to them, but that was impossible because Ross's eyes were watering while she was wearing these, full-size, eye-size contacts.
1975 contacts. Ouch.
Well, I was like, they weren't soft. Those were hard-ass motherfuckers.
Yeah, they were probably plastic.
So...
Oof. But yeah, so one choice piece. I love that the weapon is a woman stalking. It's another symbol of domesticity, but it's also all about like women's apparel and cosmetics, and like real women wear pantyhose. So what better to strangle you with?
I mean, it's like what you were saying earlier about the weapon of suicide being a domestic object in the oven.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that one more thing about the eyes. The reason the eyes are the one thing that's not finished in the robot yet, they decided that the men would have the last element added to the robot to be the most human, meaning the eyes.
Yeah, because even when we saw Ike doing the sketches, we got a close-up of her eyes and the reflection in them. They were very clearly taking a lot of care to get the eyes just right.
Yeah.
It's a good touch. A very good touch.
But so we killed Joanna off screen, which
I'm super happy about. Here's the thing. If she's going to fight back, we would have had to see a struggle, and then we would have had to see her get killed.
Right.
And this movie already hits me pretty fucking hard. I don't think I could take seeing Joanna get killed.
Do you think that she gives up in this scene? Or is she just too in shock that she can't fight back,
I mean, if you saw a robot version of herself, and she has to know that Walter coordinated all of this.
God, at that point, I'm just like, whatever, man. Like, survival mode.
Take me, Lord. Just end it now.
Yeah. Oof. So, and unless you thought that was the end of the movie, they've got
let's dig the knife in a little deeper with this coda. So we cut to black, and then we're back in the supermarket. We see a black couple. They're not having a great day. They're bickering in the aisle. And then we just follow the women as they make their way. So like we follow, I think it's Charmaine to Carol to Bobbie. And finally, the reveal of Joanna, dressed, of course, like all the other Stepford Wives. I do want to highlight Bobbie's outfit. It's the yellow backless dress. It is stunning. I think she looks so fucking good. I'm just like, I get it. She's a robot now, but damn, that dress is doing everything right on her.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, all the women look great in this movie.
They look great, yeah. It's just they're also cookie cutter perfection.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Joanna is now clearly a robot, and she pushes the cart towards us until we freeze on her eye. And then that's where we get the credits.
Which I actually am sad that I missed this, but Wikipedia is telling me that during the end credits, photographs show a smiling Walter driving the family car and picking up his new Stepford wife from the supermarket with their children in the back seat.
Those kids are going to need so much therapy.
No, they're going to be fine. They have a robot raising them.
Oh my God. It's like the Jetsons.
Yeah, this movie's great. I love it. I truly can't. I'm really still shocked that people today still think this is a bad movie.
Yeah, like, if you want to say it's a little bit slow, sure, I'll give that to you. I think the performances are very exciting, and I like watching how they collect the clues and kind of put it together. And then when we get to that ending, it's just oh God, is she going to get out of it? The movie. And I'm so thoroughly entertained.
Again, can't think of a movie off the top of my head right now, but I do love a movie that for most of its runtime doesn't operate as a straightforward genre film. And then that shift in the last 10 or 20 minutes where it's like, oh no, we're going full horror movie here. Mm-hmm. I like the shift that. I mean, again, it is jarring, but I think that adds to the horror of it.
Well, and it's funny because I've heard you say so often on more contemporary films, like on Patreon, you have had so many films where you say this movie would just work better as a drama and we just take the genre out of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that this movie is a prime example of how you do it well. Like,
Agreed.
How do you do genre for the most part with how do you do drama for the most part with hints of genre, and then you build to a straightforward genre finale, and it really, really works.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is it's jarring, but it's not too jarring. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. This works, and I know exactly what you're talking about with this more modern films, but also those are films that I'm pretty sure I'm on record as saying they're boring. They're very boring.
Okay, that's also fair. Yes, you have often said that in conjunction.
But anyway, great movie. Everyone. This is fantastic. So hope you enjoyed it. If you were able to find it, or allegedly go to YouTube to allegedly watch that alleged copy that's there.
Yeah.
But before we announce what we're covering next week, some quick housekeeping. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Blue Sky and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. And if you want to chat with other listeners, please join our new Horror Queers Discord, which is linked in the show notes. Mm-hmm. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers.
Trace, it's your last time you have to say it.
I know, I'm on the last one. If you subscribe today, you will get 372 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Oddity, Opus, Borderline, Death of a Unicorn, and a brand new audio commentary on Sin City for its 20th anniversary. And yes, next week we'll have a new schedule for April.
There we go. Yes. And we'll have to wait 2 weeks to revisit similar themes to all of this doppelganger takeover stuff.
Oh, yes.
But in between that, we're going to revisit a film which is not celebrating an anniversary, but it is very, very queer. Although I'm going to be interested to see if we can get a queer reading. But considering our two leads are now out and proud queer women, we're going to be talking about Mr. Fincher's 2002 film, Panic Room.
I'm really excited to revisit this because this is one of those R-rated movies that my parents did let me watch at an earlier age because it was quote unquote just the language and some gun violence.
Sure.
But I haven't seen it since. I feel like I watched this several times as a teenager, but I have not seen this in at least 15 years.
Okay. So ironically enough, I just watched this earlier this year because when my husband and I went to Chicago, this was playing in the hotel and we just ended up having a night in with takeout. And I was like, I haven't seen Panic Room in forever. So we just ended up watching it. And apart from some slightly dodgy CGI shit as we go through, still good.
Right. Because the CGI is all the room stuff as we move through the rooms and the vents and shit.
Yeah, it's very Fight Club in that regard. So we're doing some what can we do with this newfangled CGI stuff? But performances, pretty top notch. This is a fun crime thriller.
This is how I learned who country singer Dwight Yoakam was.
Oh, he's freaky.
Is he a country singer? I'm sorry, singer. I don't know if he's a country singer. Is singer Dwight Yoakam?
No, country singer.
Okay,
you're right.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, until next week, we can cross out the Stepford Wives.
Indeed, and cross out Horror Queers.